destiny is terrifying. Mine is a big destiny.
That was CALLAS. That was CALLAS. And that was CALLAS. To her detractors, the many voices of Maria Callas were a flaw. To her admirers, they were what made her Callas. Her friend, conductor Nicola Ricchigno, was asked by reporters,
"But is it true that Maria Callas has 3 voices?" I said, "You're all wrong. Maria Callas has 300 voices. Maria really could sound like a mezzo, like a contralto if she chose to, and then still sing high E flats. The possibilities of her instrument were infinite. Maria was the female voice."
Maria Callas, the soprano whose intensely dramatic portrayals made her the most exciting opera singer of her time, died of a heart attack yesterday at her home in Paris. She was 53 years old. Miss Callas had told some friends this summer that she was concerned about her health. But others...
It has been 10 years since the world first heard the news that Maria Callas was dead. One British critic said of her, "No longer a singer, she is now an idea." In death, her legend continues, as well as the myth and controversy that surrounded her throughout her career. In remembering Callas the artist, we remember her voice and the remarkable things she accomplished with it. But along with the voice, this is a story of Maria Callas the woman, who equally fascinated the world.
There are 2 people in me. I would like to be Maria, but there is the Callas that I have to live up to. I like to think that they both go together because Callas has been Maria. In my singing and in my work, Callas is sort of a celebrity. But destiny brought me into this career. I was forced into it first by my mother, then by my husband. I would have given it up with pleasure.
Callas was born in Manhattan to Greek immigrant parents at Flower Fifth Avenue Hospital in 1923. As with much else in her life, the exact date of her birth is mired in controversy. Her mother says December 3rd. Callas preferred the 4th. In fact, a recently discovered birth certificate proves that Callas was born on December 2nd. She was christened Maria Anna Sophia Cecilia, but was called Mary Ann by her family and friends.
I'm born Greek Orthodox, but I don't practice it in the sense that I go to church and I pray, or if I do, I go when nobody's around and I light a candle and I say, "Give me what you want. I have no choice, good or bad, but give me the strength also to be able to overcome it."
The family name was too long and cumbersome for the new life in America, and as so many immigrants had done before him, her father shortened it. In a 1957 interview in Chicago with Norman Ross, Callas spoke of her early years and gave a lesson in pronouncing her name.
Ready? Kalogeropoulou. Well, it's rather long.
And that's why your father, who's a pharmacist, changed it to Callas?
Yes, I'm afraid so.
You went to school, I know, in New York at Public School 164, and you began to sing at the age of 8.
La Paloma was one of the first songs Callas sang as a child. Later, she learned a popular ballad of the day called A Heart That's Free, which she heard Jeanette MacDonald sing in the 1936 movie San Francisco. To a 13-year-old girl in Washington Heights, Jeanette MacDonald must have been the embodiment of vocal glamour. There were also Saturday afternoon broadcasts from the Metropolitan Opera. One of the reigning prima donnas was Lily Pons. Callas heard her on the radio as Lucia di Lammermoor, a role that she would later make her own. I don't care if she is a star, the 13-year-old proclaimed. She sings off-key. One day I'm going to be a star myself, a bigger star than her. Curiously, Callas later denied having the ambition to be a singer.
I didn't even think I had a voice. I was just singing for pleasure. I never even dreamed of having to have a career as a singer. I don't think I would have chosen that even. I might have chosen being a musician, or either a pianist probably, or an actress.
This would not be the first or the last time that Callas's words in public were at odds with her private thoughts.
Your mother drove you very hard as a singer, didn't she?
Yes.
If you have a daughter who has great talent as a singer, would you force her to practice at a very early age?
No, decidedly no. Children should not be given this responsibility. Children should have a wonderful childhood. I have not had it. I wish I could have.
You sang on the radio here as a little girl before you went to Athens. Who was the MC on that program?
The MC was Jack Benny, imagine. And I didn't win the first prize.
You didn't win the first prize?
Oddly enough. I remember only Jack Benny was so terribly disappointed. He just couldn't believe it. There was a jury of, very famous children at that time. I don't remember who they were.
Remember what you won?
I won a Boulevard wristwatch. And the one that won first prize, I would be most curious to know what had happened to this boy. He was an accordion player. Imagine.
Callas also entered talent contests, but not under her own name. Her father objected to his wife's ambitions for their younger daughter, so Maria Callas had to sing under an alias, Nina Foresti, when she appeared on Major Bow's Amateur Hour in 1935.
What's your ambition? Operatic, concert, radio?
Well, my ambitions were very high, but since my father's laboratories are closed.
Father was a chemist. Well, what are you doing now?
Oh, I'm employed in the toy department of a large department store.
And you want to sing something from Puccini, huh?
Yes, I would like to.
Yes, I thought so. They all do. All right, what do you want to sing?
Something from Madame Butterfly.
All right.
A bit abbreviated.
That's good. Go ahead.
La
Foresti, who sang an aria from Madame Butterfly.
CALLAS only rated a D, according to the show's producer, with the notation, faint possibility for future. Radio interviewer Norman Ross.
You never went very far in school, not beyond grade school. Why was that?
We left for Greece in 1937, so I had just gone into high school. I went to Greece and I couldn't continue school there because my mother decided on my singing career.
And you knew poverty, too, I know, in New York after the 1929 crash, and famine and cold and bombs in Greece in World War II.
But there's quite a difference between poverty and living in the best manner my father could have. Poverty in Greece, yes, and it wasn't anybody's fault but the war.
It was in Athens that CALLAS began her first formal musical training.
They brought me to the conservatory, and they had to fake my age because, of course, I was then 13 years old, and no conservatory would accept you. And I was very tall and well-built, so I easily passed for 17 years old. In Greece, I made an 8-year career. We were, kept there during the war. I could have come back, but I didn't feel it right or proper, I don't know, to leave my mother and my sister, so I stayed on.
Her first stage appearance was as Santuzza in a student production of Cavalleria Rusticana in Athens in 1939.
I started very early. My teacher, who was Elvira de Hidalgo, started very early because she had the real great training, maybe even the last great training of the real bel canto. As a young girl, which means 13 years old, I was immediately thrown into her arms.
Elvira de Hidalgo had been a renowned coloratura soprano at La Scala and at the Metropolitan Opera, where she had appeared with Enrico Caruso. She introduced CALLAS to the world of the early 19th century bel canto repertory, the music of Rossini, Bellini, and Donizetti.
The bel canto is not beautiful singing. It's a sort of a straitjacket that you're supposed to put on. You have to exactly learn to form your sentences, learn music, which is essential, good taste, which is essential. When we say bel canto, it is not only the method that keeps your voice light, pushing the instrument into a certain zone where it might not be too large in sound, but penetrating. And teaching the scales, the trills, all the bel canto embellishments, which is a whole vast language on its own.
To CALLAS, de Hidalgo became almost a surrogate mother and the center of her life.
I was fascinated by listening to all her pupils, the mezzo-sopranos, even tenors, and it was most interesting because you learned a lot. So I used to go to the conservatoire, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I used to leave with the last pupil. Even de Hidalgo was quite amazed because she was asking me frequently, why do you stay here? My answer was that even from the least talented pupil, he can teach you something that you might not be able to do.
De Hidalgo took equal pleasure in molding CALLAS's huge voice.
She knew I was a very heavy voice, but she knew also that such heavy voices should always be kept limber.
De Hidalgo was equally impressed with CALLAS's acting ability. In later life, CALLAS asked her teacher,
Was I, since a child, always easy on acting? And she says, yes, you were amazingly so. I, even then, admired the way you moved your hands and your body, and these were all new to me. And yet, she says, I was considered a good actress, and I had seen the greatest. I saw that there was something different and completely your own.
During her years in Greece, CALLAS trained her body as well as her voice.
To learn how to fall well, and you can't always fall the same way, you have to completely relax yourself. Slight tenseness, then you hurt yourself. Then also you have to learn how would this woman fall, and how would that woman fall. Once you learn these things, then you forget about them. And then you manage to free yourself of these, and even go against rules of acting, if you can get away with it.
De Hidalgo was more than a teacher to CALLAS. She became her mentor as well.
After 6 months of training with De Hidalgo, I was immediately engaged, shall we say, by the then 6-month-old opera of the National Theatre, and they needed a dramatic soprano. So they had engaged me for 1 year on an agreement that I would not sing anywhere else. And Hidalgo had seen to that contract. So I would have a sum of money that would give me the possibility of studying patiently without having the necessity of going around to work.
After a debut in a small role in Fonsupe's operetta Boccaccio in 1940, CALLAS was given the part of Tosca in 1943 at the age of 19. Fate decreed that this would also be the last role she would perform 35 years later. Though CALLAS first sang the part of Tosca in Greek, it was during these years that she learned Italian.
My teacher, De Hidalgo, told me, you've got to learn Italian. Otherwise, it's ridiculous that you just sing without understanding what you're saying. I could have learned Italian, but I had to go to the fascist school. That I couldn't do, because then I would really be branded. I had two friends that had studied in Italy. One was an Italian, half Greek. And I just started talking with them, and I had them say the verbs to me. And after 2 months, I managed to speak Italian.
These early performances in Greece were a valuable learning experience for CALLAS.
We had a operetta director. He was Renato Mordo. And he had said then two things that stuck to my mind. One, never move your hand unless you follow it with your mind and with your soul. The second thing he said was that when your colleague sings the role to you, sings his lines, try and forget what he's supposed to say, and your reactions must be as though you had never heard what he's saying, and it's all a first reaction. It must have something new about it.
She also realized what it meant to be a prima donna.
After a singer, you have to put your instrument to the service of music, not only to the bel canto, to the beauty and the line of music. Then on, you really become, or you strive to become a musician. In other words, the main instrument of the orchestra, which is probably, not probably, it is exactly the meaning of prima donna.
In this first phase of her career, Callas became aware of the backstage jealousies and intrigues that are so much a part of the operatic world.
It so happened, though, that I suppose I got on my colleagues' nerves. They were older people. I don't blame them. I was so young. And they couldn't understand why I was chosen for certain roles. And they just went on a strike. And they went to the Prime Minister and said, if she isn't brought down from first soprano to second soprano, well, we just won't sing with her, so she'll have to sing alone. I was most unhappy, and I just couldn't believe that such a thing was happening.
With the war over, Callas returned to New York in 1945 to pursue a career.
I came to America, and here I am, a very young girl of 21 with no one to believe in you. In fact, I remember poor old Merolin, who was San Francisco Opera House then, the director, heard me, and he said, oh, lovely voice, lovely this, lovely that. He says, but, you know, you're too young. Oh, no, he says, I couldn't trust a 21-year-old girl. He says, look, you go to Italy and make yourself a wonderful career, and then I'll engage you.
In addition to San Francisco, Callas also sang for Edward Johnson, the general manager of the Metropolitan Opera.
I auditioned for them, and they offered me parts that I didn't think fit for me. For instance, Butterfly, then I think I was too young and maybe a little bit too heavy. For a debut, it wouldn't have been right. I mean, if they had heard me in other operas, I could have taken over Butterfly also, but I always had these kind of other people call funny ideas, and I consider only doing my job well. And then they offered me Fidelio in English, and forgive me, but I really don't believe in opera sung in English. So I just had to refuse, and then I was supposed to open the season at, I think it was called the United States Opera Company in Chicago, and that blew up. And finally, I had the wonderful chance of meeting Zenatello and being signed up for La Gioconda at the Arena di Verona.
Giovanni Zenatello had been a major tenor at the turn of the century, creating the role of Pinkerton in Madame Butterfly. After retiring, he was in charge of reactivating the summer opera season in Verona. It was Zenatello and destiny that brought Callas to the two men who would be pivotal in her life: the conductor Tullio Serafin, who would guide her career, and a wealthy industrialist, Giovanni Battista Meneghini, who was to become her husband. She made her Italian debut in the Arena of Verona on August 2nd, 1947, as Ponchielli's La Gioconda.
First thing I was taught, no matter what note you sing, no matter how dramatic or how light it is, it should always be within the middle of the note. There is no slurring, because it is against the rules of bel canto. You begin the aria and it ends. And the breathing should be just one large breath with very many breathings in the meantime. I think even the public, sometimes if you've managed to really to give this as it should, they themselves don't breathe.
What I learned from Serafin was the characterization of Italian music is always a flowing movement, no matter how slow things go. You must serve music. If you take the trouble to really listen with your soul and with your ears, and I say soul and ears because the mind must work, but not too much, all you have to do is listen to the music. You will find every gesture there. That is where I really drank all I could from this man. I'm afraid that he's the last of those kind of maestri.
Despite a solid success at Gioconda, Callas was offered few other engagements. It was Meneghini's money and support that enabled her to bide her time.
There were many a time at the beginning of my second career also, which I call the big career, after 1947, that nobody wanted to talk to me. I mean, no agent would touch me and give me a job because I was immediately after my debut in Italy, was not loved that much. I was something new to listen to, and they disliked anything that took them away from tradition. They really came to me when they just couldn't find another one to cast in the role. Finally, when I did sing this role, whether it was Forza del Destino or Aida, there were many people that used to say, well, her high notes are beautiful, but her middle notes are not. And the other one said, oh, the middle notes are beautiful, but the top are no good. And, well, the other one would come out saying the low notes are beautiful, but in other words, they wouldn't agree. But what impressed me was in Forza del Destino in Trieste, one of those famous 4 months before I worked, they used to say that, well, she does know how to move on stage. In the meantime, Serafin had left the Scala, and he needed an Isolde, he needed a Norma, an Aida. So he remembered me from Arena di Verona, and he called me to perform Isolde. I had just looked at the first act by curiosity, and he, at the last minute, asked for an audition with me. And I wouldn't dare say I didn't know the opera. So I just bluffed. I said, yes, of course I know Isolde. And I sight-read the second act. I don't know how. God must have helped me. And he turned around and says, excellent. Thank heavens he didn't ask for the third act, because I would have died. Now, if I have to judge between Isolde and Norma, well, I'm afraid that Isolde is nothing in comparison to Norma.
It would be Serafine again, and again fate, that provided the turning point in Callas's career.
I was doing Valkyria, and I remember there was a great an influenza fever, and they were without a soprano for Puritani of Bellini. And poor old Serafine was exhausted, desperate. He couldn't find this singer and that singer. We didn't know what to do in the evening, so we were just, sight reading the role and playing around with the music. So his wife heard me singing the aria. She said, "Will you do me a favor? When my husband comes in, will you please sing that for him?" I said, "Well, if it'll please him and make him happier, yes." The next day, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I was called on the telephone. "Please put your robe and come down." I said, "I'm not washed up. It'll take me about half an hour." I said, No, come down the way you are." And he said, "Sing." I said, "What?" "Sing what you sang to me yesterday." There was the director of the theater. I said, anyway, I was forced to sing the aria. Sight read, of course, which was the second time or third time I sight read it. I heard them talking, and he says to me, "Well, look, Maria, you're going to do this role in a week." I said, "I'm going to do what in a week?" He says, "You're going to sing Puritani in a week. I undertake that you study it." I said, "I can't. I have 3 more Valkyrias. I can't do it." He says, "I guarantee you that you can." And I said, "Well, Maestro, my best I can do. More than my best, I cannot promise." And he says, "All right, I guarantee you that, and you guarantee me that you try. That's good enough for me."
To understand the impact of Callas's feat, one has to understand that the role of Elvira in I Puritani had long been the property of light-voiced lyric sopranos such as Margherita Carosio, the artists Venice's Fenice Theatre had originally engaged to sing the part. The incredible contrast of Callas's darker, heavier voice in the same music was shocking. The phenomenon of a singer in the same week alternating Wagner's Brunhilde and then Bellini's Elvira was unheard of at the time and became the talk of the Italian music world. Franco Zeffirelli explains.
What she did in Venice was really incredible. You need to be familiar with opera to realize the enormity of her achievement. It was if someone asked Birgit Nilsson, who is famous for her great Wagnerian voice, to substitute overnight for Beverly Sills.
Serafine knew instinctively that Callas's musical destiny lay within the bel canto repertory, and he gradually led her to roles such as Norma and Lucia. But for a while, Callas continued to sing the dramatic soprano roles that had launched her career. Puccini's Turandot, for example.
I sang Turandot. Then as soon as I could have gotten out of these roles, well, I got out. In fact, I dedicated myself to the bel canto roles that too good for the voice.
At the Rome Opera in 1949, Callas performed another Wagnerian role, Kundry in Parsifal. This was the first time Zeffirelli heard Callas sing.
And I, like thousands of other people, were immediately taken by the extraordinary quality of this woman's personality and the sound of that voice. I remember my ears were absolutely buzzing. I had the power of this woman, and it was something unique.
It was also in 1949 at the Teatro San Carlo in Naples that Callas sang the demanding part of Abigail in Verdi's Nabucco. For the only time in her career, Gino Becchi appeared in the title role.
Oh
In addition to appearing at major theaters in Italy, Callas and Serafine were engaged that same year for the international season at the Teatro Colón in Buenos Aires. And in 1950, she made her debut in Mexico. A highlight of that season was her first appearance as Leonora in Verdi's Il Trovatore that brought her together for the only time with the American baritone Leonard Warren. Those who were Callas during her 3 seasons in Mexico still talk about her performance in Aida in the summer of 1951. These performances of Aida were crowned by Callas with an interpolated top E-flat at the end of the opera's triumphal scene that drove audiences wild. Callas had yet to conquer Italy's major opera house, Milan's La Scala. Composer Giancarlo Menotti remembers how much Callas was disliked by the theater's general manager, Antonio Ghiringhelli. Menotti needed a soprano to sing Magda at the Scala premiere of his opera The Consul, and he wanted Callas.
So I called Ghiringhelli and I said, I found my singer. Her name is Maria Callas. Ghiringhelli said, Maria Callas, oh my God, no, never, never, never. I will not have Maria Callas in this theater unless she only comes as a guest artist. So I went back to Callas. We had another meeting, and I said, well, Ghiringhelli will be very happy, of course I had to lie, to have you on La Scala, but only as a guest artist. So Maria looked very surprised and quite indignant. I said, I'm sorry, Mr. Menotti, but unless I go back to La Scala as a regular artist, I will not put my foot in that theater again. But curious enough, before we left each other that day, she stopped me as I was going out of the door and she said, Mr. Menotti, I want you to remember one thing, however, that I will sing at La Scala, and that Ghiringhelli will pay for this for the rest of his life.
But Ghiringhelli could not hold out against the force of Callas's personality and the excitement her voice created. And Callas made her formal debut on the opening night of the La Scala 1951 season as Elena in Verdi's I Vespri Siciliani, inaugurating a period in the theater's history that would become known as the Callas era. Callas joined Serafine at Florence's May Festival to perform Rossini's Armida, a long-forgotten opera that required 5 leading tenors. Even with that competition, many thought the highlight of that revival was Callas' singing of the demanding aria, D'amor al dolce impero. Tenor Giuseppe Di Stefano's life and career were to be indelibly linked with Callas's. Before they actually met, he encountered her on a flight from Rome to Brazil in 1951. Callas was traveling with her husband, Giovanni Meneghini.
In those years, there was Strato Cruiser, they had some beds. I heard them talking all night. You didn't take care of him for the bed. So all night she was complaining. Since she talked Veronese, a little dialect from Verona, and they talked about opera, and then I realized there must be this Maria Callas they were talking so much about in those years.
In the summer of 1952, Callas returned to Mexico City, appearing in 5 operas with Giuseppe Di Stefano.
Puritani, Lucia, and Traviata, Tosca, and Rigoletto. And this was my destiny, to sing with Callas.
A highlight of the 1952 season in Mexico was Callas's only staged performance as Gilda in Rigoletto, with Di Stefano as the Duke.
Ripetimi, dove felice, mio, sta bene, qualtier malde, studente sono e povero. Accogliere potessi il traditore che si disturba, rimanerai tu intera vita poi. Addio, addio, speranze d'anima. Addio, sai tu sarai, sai tu sarai, addio, 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 addio. L'aspetto più per me, per te, l'aspetto più per me, vivrai, Davide, l'aspetto mio per te. Addio, addio.
She wanted always to be beloved. She wanted to become beautiful, and she wanted to be admired as a woman. This was very important for her. And this is Maria Callas until the end.
As Callas walked off the stage following the third act finale of Traviata, in which, by the way, she interpolated another of her famous top E flats, she gave an impromptu interview responding in Italian to the Mexican announcer.
Se los da, se los otorga, con mucha sinceridad, como que en efecto lo han merecido. Dica, Maria, come va questa notte?
Oddio, non bisognerebbe domandarmi perché io vorrei essere contenta lo sono, tanto perfetta per poter accontentare questo pubblico che si mostra tanto affettuoso con me che non mi basta mai.
Hemos preguntado a la señora Callas.
Mexico also got Callas's first Lucia di Lammermoor.
Oh,